but this kid's been under pressure and highlighted for how bad he's been for a long, long time now. So maybe it's a turn. I mean, Joe Namath basically scorned him. Like, the face of the New York Jets franchise came out and said, this guy stinks, get him out. And Zach Wilson responded last night. This is a segue into the Jets, who played Kansas City, as I just said. And with Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes probably had the worst game that I've seen him play. I mean, that I've personally seen him play. I mean, he might have had worse games, but that I've seen him, it's the worst he's looked. The underthrown passes just lollipopped right to the Jets defenders. I mean, the reason why they lost this game, let's face it, is the 17-0 hole that they were in. And that's, to me, was a defense that needed something from Zach Wilson to get back into playing competitive defense again, because the Chiefs were just marching down the field. It was 17-0 in the first 7 minutes, and great defenses don't do that. Like, they just don't do that. I mean, especially when you were comparing yourselves to the 85 Bears, which I'm sure Jets fans are sick of hearing at this point. The Jets, with this game, there's no moral victories, but at least they showed you signs that, okay, maybe Zach Wilson has possibly turned a corner. Now, he did have the key fumble, and after a bunch of really good drives, he had 3 or 4 chances, or I think 3 chances to, come back and get some points on the board after the game was tied, after his run in for the 2-point conversion. It was 2020 for a long time, and the Chiefs didn't really do anything to make you think oh, okay, they got this game in the fourth quarter, other than their really good use of clock management. Although they got a little bit bailed out by the officials, let's be honest. A lot of those, that missed holding call, that penalty on Sauce Gardner, throwing that flag just seemed ridiculous. It just seemed like moments like that were going against the Jets. And then with Zach Wilson's fumble being so key there, I mean, you could tell that Kansas City was bringing a rush to him, and he probably saw it, and it freaked him out just a little bit in that moment. And, you got to give credit to Wilson, because he played the best game I have ever seen from him in the NFL. And he was someone that took accountability after that game, seeing that his fumble was a huge reason why they lost. And, yeah, you could look at Zach Wilson as he was definitely someone that brought them back in that game, was a key component of why they were in it. But at the end, him losing the football on the ground right there, that's a huge part of that game. And when your margin of error is razor thin, you can't make mistakes like that. But it's not just him. You can't be down 17-0. You got to give your offense at least the belief that they can come back and compete and win, or they can come out offensively and get something going. I mean, to me, though, the defense played like that to start the game because they felt like they had no chance. The effort wasn't there. Once Zach Wilson was making some plays offensively and the Jets were getting some points on the board, then the defense started to play better. I mean, once it was 2020 or it was I think it was 2012 and stuff like that, like the Jets defense was locked. They were just locking up Kansas City, and they were getting key interceptions. You could feel the momentum gaining into halftime and even in the third quarter, and even some moments in the fourth quarter, you could feel it. But ultimately, the Jets showed signs. But they got to come out next week and they got to get a W. They got to get a win. They're facing the Denver Broncos. They're at Denver. This should be a win for them. And to go in 2-3, okay, the Broncos taking care of business, right? The Broncos, even after their win versus Chicago, they've looked pretty dreadful this year. I mean, Sean Payton, with those comments he made in the offseason, it's just making him look, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. I mean, especially since they probably should have lost to the Bears. Okay, and the Bears have looked pathetic. The Bears have been the worst team in the NFL. I mean, let's be honest here. I mean, just gross stories coming out everywhere, just so much drama, and it's such a circus. And some people actually had them being pretty good this year. I mean, Justin Fields, I don't know how much of it is his fault. He can run, he's got legs, but obviously he just doesn't look great. And but you don't know if everything's all set there with their culture, and he's still a young quarterback. I mean, my whole point is just to get back to the Jets, is that they showed signs of being a competitive team, and they needed a game like that. And I don't really believe in moral victories at this point with these teams, because, how many times, I mean, I'm a Nets fan, I'm a Giants fan, like Jets fans out there, Mets fans, like these Knicks fans, like a bunch of sports fans with teams that typically disappoint. How many games do you see like this where you compete in against pretty good to really good teams, right? And then it slips away at the end because of a mistake. Sometimes, these are all professional athletes. Like, these guys making one little mini mistake is the difference in a game. And it's the difference between a good team and a bad team. So I don't want to get my hopes too high on the if I was a Jets fan over this weekend, but it was really nice to see Zach Wilson play really good football. And, other things I wanted to get to was, Robert Saleh briefly is, listen, Robert Saleh, I think, is a guy everybody likes, obviously. He seems to be a really good dude. I just don't like sometimes how emotional he is on the sidelines, as a head coach, in the way he makes his facial expressions. He acts kind of like a player, and I think that's why players like him. But ultimately, I don't know if it sets the right leadership quality. I don't think it's the right leadership quality to have that. When you see Zach Wilson overthrow Garrett Wilson on what should have been an easy touchdown, and you see Robert Saleh kind of look at it like I could have had something there. Like, that's not. I don't think a head coach should do that. Just keep a plain face, like, it's okay if a guy screws up. I mean, Zach Wilson made some really good plays. But at the end of the day, the better team won. I think Nathaniel Hackett and Zach Wilson showed signs of possibly being really good going to the future. Against specifically against teams they're supposed to beat. However, when the pressure's on Zach Wilson, he hasn't really been that great, right? They should have beat the Patriots, and Zach Wilson was terrible. Pressure wasn't really on Zach Wilson versus Buffalo. Excuse me. Because obviously he wasn't expected to play. It was kind of like you're playing with loose change at this point, right? And they got the win. So maybe it's a thing of like, when he's under pressure, he doesn't play as well. Most people don't. But this kid's been under pressure and highlighted for how bad he's been for a long, long time now. So maybe it's a turn. I mean, Joe Namath basically calling him out last week. I mean, I didn't do a pod last week. My mistake. I had some stuff going on. But basically, I also didn't really, I was coughing too. It was like, wouldn't have been interesting to listen to. But ultimately, Zach Wilson was torched by this Jets fan base after the Patriots loss, which they should have won. And Joe Namath came out and basically scorned him. Like, the face of the New York Jets franchise came out and said, "This guy stinks, get him out." And Zach Wilson responded last night. And then when you get Joe Namath comes on the next day on the Michael Kay show, and he's like, "Yeah, I said that, but I was just a fan. I was an angry fan." Listen, fans get angry. And this is the deal with New York fans, right? Like, people can rip them all they want. Like, you guys are too harsh on your players. Here's the thing. If you play well, like, you're going to be seen as a god. I mean, Jalen Brunson, just look at Jalen Brunson. Side note, talking about basketball. Just look at Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson was a really good player for Dallas, and I don't think anybody really thought he would be as good as he was last year. And last year, Jalen Brunson was really good for the Knicks. He wasn't even an all-star, but he was really good, and clearly people will argue he should have been. That's a debate all the day. If you put him on, who you taking out, judging at that point in the season. But, he was the clear leader of that Knicks team. And they went to the second round of the playoffs and lost to the Miami Heat. And Jalen Brunson, on John Jastrzemski's podcast, listed him the number one athlete in New York over Aaron Judge and Garrett Cole and like craziness. Like, you're a god in New York if you win and you play well. Like, you're a god. So that's just how it comes. The talk about Zach Wilson this week is like, yeah, he stinks, but he played really well and I'm happy for him. Like, we're not like, you know, freaking sadists. Like, we don't want these people to fail. I mean, maybe some sickos do, but Jets fans want Zach Wilson to play good. The reality is he just wasn't playing well. So when Zach Wilson comes in and plays really good football against Kansas City, a team that's, a lot of people expect to be competing for a Super Bowl this year, and they got all the buzz. They got Taylor Swift's there. They got Travis Kelce, like that whole thing. Like, a lot of people came in not on the Jets side and basically saying that the Jets were going to lose that game. And myself included. I think every person who knows anything about football had the Chiefs handling them pretty good. And the Jets came out and they competed. And that's all you want to see, especially in the situation they are currently. But they got to win next week. And that's really that simple.